Here is attempt number 1 at the Bestie Bag. I made it about a month ago, just before Christmas, as it was my boyfriend's Christmas present. In this video, I am going to try and make a second attempted bag for myself this time. And there's a few things that I plan on doing slightly better, hopefully. First, let's discuss fabric choices. Now, obviously, for the first bag, I went for this gorgeous thick cord, which I mean, I'd happily use it and work with it again. For a bag that I want to be really practical, I feel like this versatile kind of tan, orangey colour, brown, will go with loads. So to go with the tan, I chose a black lining fabric, very standard, very basic. And there's also a medium stiff interfacing sandwiched in the middle of them, which was iron-on. So I'll retouch on the interfacing in a moment. For the second bag, I will be making it out of this gorgeous, rich chocolate brown plaid fabric. So it has got the black lines in the plaid, but it's got this really rich undertone of a warm, kind of almost purpley chocolate brown. And then there's this really gorgeous chocolate coloured lining fabric to go with it too on the inside. This velvet is a little bit thinner than the cord that I used previously, so I definitely want to interface this one so that it's a little bit more robust and has a good form to the bag. But here's my big gripe with attempt number 1, and the main thing that I will be doing differently is the interfacing choice. Can you hear that? Unfortunately, I just haven't loved the crunchy texture of the interfacing for this project. It gives the bag a crinkled feel to it, and I think it does look slightly more creased because of the interfacing choice. So learning point 1 for me was your choice of interfacing is so important to the project. Obviously, interfacing your bag is completely optional. It's a personal preference anyway. But I wanted these crossbody bags to feel fairly robust and be hard wearing as possible, and for them to have a bit of shape to them as well. The interfacing itself, you can see, feels a little bit more like paper. It holds its form quite straight. For the second bag, I've selected this cotton interfacing. It was a little bit more expensive, but the quantities needed for this bag are so small. I'm making the size medium, that, to be honest, I think I'm using under £5 worth of interfacing, so it's not going to break the bank. Crucially, it feels like fabric, it moves like fabric, and it doesn't seem to crinkle or crease in any way that would be, permanent. So I'm hoping using this interfacing will transform the look and feel of my second bag. So my second learning was your choice of zip is also important before even starting the project. I was determined to use a beautiful metal zip to give it a polished, professional feel to the bag as possible, at least. But I couldn't find the length of zip that was prescribed in the pattern for the life of me in the haberdashery that I went to. So I ended up on this little number, which is the chocolate one, ready to go with the chocolate bag. And it is exactly the same zip type as I used for the tan first attempt bag. And I'm using a 36 centimetre or 14-inch zip. But let me just check. They advise a zip of 38.1 centimetres for views A and B. So I am 2.1 centimetres too short in my zip. So that was the first thing that I knew when I purchased the zip the pattern would have to be adapted for, but that's fine. My other zip issue was, can you see that the bottom of this has no material flappy ends to it? So this side does, but this side doesn't, and it's almost sealed off with plastic, and I didn't realise that until after I purchased the zips. The other one was, my first try was exactly the same, but I've worked out a way around that as well. So I'm hoping second attempt I'll be able to recreate the workaround. So make your life simpler and do not go for a zip that does not have a material flappy end that you can sew into. It'll just mean that your bag zip will be slightly shorter than what is prescribed in the pattern. So you can see I've had to extend this tab to deal with the shorter zip already, the 36 versus the 38 zip. So my tabs on each end are slightly wonky, they're not even, but in the reality of things, when you wear this bag, you'll never notice the difference. So if you do have to buy a shorter zip, it's not the end of the world. There's a way around it, and I'll go through that. I have already done stage one, which was cutting out all of the pattern pieces and all of the interfacing pieces and all of the lining pieces. So I have a lovely pile of things ready to go here, which I have pre-ironed as well, which also really, really helps the process. One thing I am changing from how I did things last time, I have tried to be absolutely meticulous when it comes to putting in the notches to mark where things should line up. So I actually drew these lines on last time because I was worried about making notches in the fabric which would slightly destabilize, the fabric. It's a weave, so I don't want to make it weaker in these areas. But to be honest, the seam allowance is long enough. I'm not going to be overlocking, but I will zigzag stitch or close up the seams where possible. So I don't think it's a big deal, and it shouldn't weaken the bag too much me by putting, not even a ½ centimetre notch into the seam allowance. So I've done all my notches as per the pattern rather than what I did last time, which was having to keep redrawing little lines in where they'd kind of rubbed out. So this should be much easier to align pattern pieces. So they're ready to go. I'm going to head to my sewing machine setup. I'm so rookie at this filming thing. I've already almost forgotten a step, which is ironing together the pattern pieces with the main outer body fabric to the interfacing, or joining it maybe by sewing if you haven't got iron on like I do. So I am actually trying to be as precise as possible. So can you see that I have drawn the seam allowance 1.3 onto this lining fabric, which I find really hard to work with, and it slips and slides so easily. So I've drawn on my guiding lines to fold over. Should look like this, double fold, and then I'm going to press that down with the iron. So just an extra little time added addition, but personally as a beginner it really helps me have confidence that at least I'm doing a vaguely straight line of about the right seam allowance. But if you're more experienced, then potentially this might be overkill to you. Today is a new day, it's a rainy day, but I did spend my first evening on this project working on steps 1 to 7 last week. That involved getting the lining ready by attaching pockets and zigzag stitching around any loose edges which will be non-protected otherwise, so that they don't fray. I found the silky lining fabric quite difficult to work with, especially even after I kind of played about with a piece of scrap fabric on a zigzag stitch, working out the thickness of the stitch, how wide it should be, how loose it should be, and it didn't seem to improve that much, especially when it was just one layer of the material, because it just slipped through the machine or didn't catch through the machine. It's not my neatest work, but it is all going to be hidden in the inside of the bag, so it's not the end of the world. On my second evening last week working on the project, I attached the zipper tabs on the pattern step 8. As noted previously, I did buy zips that were slightly too small, or smaller than the pattern recommended anyway. So as they were too short, I had to make up for this by extending the zipper tabs. And I only did this on one side. You probably could do this on evenly on both sides, but my mental math brain, it did one side, which worked perfectly well, and I don't think you notice that they're uneven because it's not massive. It means that I cut out 2 different zip tab pieces when I was cutting out the pattern from the fabric. Just remember to calculate the amount you need to extend your zipper tab by or i.e. the amount that your zip is too short by, and then double it. As in step 8, you fold over the tabs perfectly in half, and so whatever you need the extension amount to be, it needs to be double. I skipped step 9 as I'm doing view A, but step 9 is relevant if you're doing views B or D. I moved straight on to step 10, attaching the zip tabs and all to the first side of the main body of the bag fabric. Do use a zip foot on your machine if you can. I have tried it both without and with, and it is a million times easier with a zipper foot, which just helps you guide the machine, but of course it is completely possible to do this with a non-zipper foot too. Pattern step 11 then requires attaching the main body and zip that you've just attached together to then the first side of your lining. The zip needs to be sandwiched in the middle when you are lining up these two pieces. Now, I was a little hesitant when I did this step that I'd sandwich the layers in the right order, triple checked my own work. All you need to remember is right sides together. I sewed them together lining side up through the machine, which is what the pattern recommends, and it is much easier to follow your original stitch joining the zip and the main body so that you know the lining is then being joined in the same place as well. So there's the recap. On to today.
At this stage, it does look a little bit more like a brown stingray than a bag, but despite that, it does feel like it's coming together, which is exciting.
When assembling the lining, do not do what I did and attach the main body of the bag, your outside fabric, to your lining. Do not sandwich all 3 layers. You only need to do the 2 lining pieces together on step 15. Save yourself some unpicking time. Pattern steps 15 and 16 have been achieved. My lining is now sewn together, both sides, and one side has a lovely gaping purposeful hole, but that will come in useful. I'm trusting the pattern again. It does need to be large, as I remember from last time. Trust the process. So I'm just going to snip off some of these loose threads, tidy it up on the inside, and then we're going to move on to step 17 is adding the strap tabs to either side of the body pieces.
Next, we're flying on to step 18, but then I ran out of thread. Fuming. After a trip to the shops the next day, I continued step 18, taking great care to try and tuck the lining out of the way en route. At this point, I could do steps 19 and 20, ironing and flipping the bag right sides out. Moving on to pattern step 21, I would recommend going very slowly as you will be able to see this top stitch. So you want the finish to be as tidy as possible. And take care not to accidentally catch any lining pieces or other pieces of fabric that shouldn't be in your sandwich at this stage. Do it really carefully. You'll be working from the middle out, and so it does get really quite tricky at the end as you work towards the strap tabs on each side, but just do the best you can to ensure that you are going up to your marker on the strap tabs each side. Whoops, I forgot to film the making of my straps, but to be honest, they are rectangles and relatively straightforward to follow the pattern on, so I'm sure if you're doing it too, it'll be straightforward for yourself. So here I am moving on to steps 27 to 29, attaching the strap tabs, and I did slightly deviate from the pattern in that I chose to go with a non-adjustable strap, and I've fully attached both sides of my right side strap to the bag itself, so I didn't bother making a left side strap. and just put it to the length that I tried on, tested, and was happy with. So it's not adjustable, but I designed it so. But obviously adjustable is handy also. Do whatever you fancy. So after doing step 30 and turning the bag completely right side out, I moved on to step 31 and added a little pre-step here, which was hammering down the outer corners because the fabric felt quite bulky and I knew that my machine was really going to struggle through it. So I think I picked up this tip on like a YouTube short. I can't remember who it was from, but it actually works. So if your fabric is feeling quite bulky as well and your machine's going to struggle, this might be a handy little step to add in. And then that's pretty much it, apart from a hand stitching session to look forward to on step 32. But here's what the finished piece looks like. I am so thrilled with it. I'll probably be making another one, maybe for more of a summer bag. I hope it was kind of helpful what I've shared. Let me know what you think. Thanks and bye for now.